Hello Year 2. Today I'm going to be showing you how to create a background for your Wind in the Willows puppet show. The first thing you need to get is a piece of paper or card for drawing your background on. I haven't got any plain paper at my house, so I did find a piece of A3 white card, which is quite a large piece, and it worked really well for the background. I'll just show you the size of A3. Your school exercise books are A4 and they're half the size of A3. So A3 is double A4, it's 2 times as big. If you haven't got any large pieces of paper or card at your home, don't worry, you can actually join smaller pieces of paper or card together to make a bigger background, and you can then make it as big as you want. Now it's time to decide which background you would like to create. Here are some ideas of landscapes from the story that you might like to use. You might choose to create the riverbank where Ratty lives and Mole lives close by. You may choose to create the wild wood where Mr. Badger lives, or maybe you'd like to have a go at making Mr. Toad's grand Toad Hall as your background. Once you've decided which background you're going to make, it's time to gather the things you need next. Here are some ideas for you. Maybe you'd like to choose crayons or felt tip pens, colouring pencils or paint. You may choose to make a collage for your background. So I've had a look in our craft box at home and found a few things that I could use. I've also been for a walk around my garden and collected some natural objects from outside. So I found some sticks on the floor, and I've taken some cuttings of trees and bushes that I've got growing in my garden. If you collect natural objects from your garden or when you're going for a walk around the park, remember to try and pick things up that are already on the floor. You shouldn't pick new things that are growing without your grown-ups' permission. Pause the video now to collect the things that you need, and remember you can pause the video at any point whilst you're making your background too. When I thought about which background I would like to make, I remembered back to the story and my favourite characters in the story. And my favourite characters are Ratty and Moley because I really love the special friendship that they have. So I decided that I would like to create the riverbank scene. A lot of the story of The Wind in the Willows is set around the riverbank, so I thought this would be a good setting to use as a background. So this is the one I created, and I'm going to show you how I made it. I've collected all the resources that I need to make my background. I've got a writing pencil because I prefer to draw everything first before I add the colour. You might be confident to just paint straight away or use pens or crayons straight away, but I prefer to draw first, and then I can rub anything that I'm not happy with, because you can't rub out paint or crayon or coloured pencil or pens, so that's why I prefer to draw first. I have chosen to use paints today, so I think you'll be able to see it really clearly if I paint on my easel. So I've got a set of watercolor paints, which I find so magical because when you touch watercolor paints, when they're dry, you don't get any colour on your fingers or on the brush. You have to add water to make the magic happen, to make them work. So this is a new set I got for my birthday, so I'm really excited to use them again. I've got a big paintbrush, so I'm going to be painting quite large areas, and I won't be using this for detail, but it's really good for painting large areas. I've got my pot of water, so I can use my watercolour paints, and I've got some cotton buds, which I'll show you what we're going to do with those later. But the first thing I need to do is draw out the background, so I'm going to use my pencil. The first mark and line I'm going to make is the horizon. Do you know what horizon is? That's right, it's like an invisible line where the sky meets the earth or the land. So I'm going to draw that first. So I think I'm going to draw it just over halfway across my paper. So I'm going to start on this side and I'm going to draw it all the way across. So this section up here will be the sky, and down here I'm going to draw the riverbank and the river. So my next job is to draw the riverbank on this side, the top above the river. So I think I'm going to curve it around, and I'm going to draw it all the way across. Then I'm going to curve it around like a curly C and go all the way across the bottom of my paper to make the bottom of my riverbank. There we go. It looks a bit strange at the moment, but once it's coloured, it will make more sense. So I've drawn out my lines. I'm going to put my pencil down and I'm going to start to paint. So I need to wet my brush because I'm using watercolours, and the wet bristles will pick up the paint much better. So I'll start with the sky. If I show you my paints, I've got some different blues. I think I'm going to use the lighter blue for my sky. If you're using pens, maybe you've got different shades of blue in your pen set or pencils. If you haven't, it doesn't matter. You can actually make your pens and pencils lighter and darker just by adding more pressure, pushing a bit harder if you want it darker, or pushing a bit lighter if you want it lighter. And I'm just using strokes, horizontal strokes, which means my brush is going across the page, just light strokes. Where the paint looks a bit darker, so I've had the paint a bit thicker on my brush, like this. And where it's lighter is just where my brush is running out of paint. So I need to reload my brush and do all the sky at the top, this lovely light blue colour. So I think it's going to be a summer's day for this picture. A bit more blue. I quite like how some areas are darker and some areas are lighter, because it makes it look like a real sky. Like there might be clouds in the sky, changing the colour of the sky as well. A bit more blue to the top. Now I'm painting on an easel, and you might not have an easel at home, and I didn't actually use an easel to make my first background. I sat at the table and painted there, but I'm only using an easel really so that you can see what I'm doing a bit easier, but it's not what I choose to paint on. It's a bit wobbly actually, so I prefer to sit at a table and paint at the table. So there's my sky. Next job is the riverbank, which riverbanks are normally quite grassy, and they have plants growing and flowers growing and trees growing as well. So the main colour is going to be green. So I'm going to choose one of my greens, quite a bright green so you can see. And I'm going to paint the top of the riverbank here and the bottom here. So in the middle, we've got the river. So again, I'm using horizontal strokes, just curving round that bend there, because our river's going to bend round and curve round out of sight. More up there. I think I need a bit more green on my brush. There we go. I'm doing it quite quickly, but you can take your time. I just don't want you to have to sit here and watch this for too long. There we go. If you're using paints, maybe you've got poster paints. I didn't have enough colours to use poster paints actually, but you can mix colours to make new colours. You could make green by mixing two of the primary colours. I wonder if you know which two you would need to make green. That's right, blue and yellow. You've experimented with colour mixing at school, so you're already experts. And remember, if you want to make a colour darker, you can add black paint. And if you want to make a colour lighter, you can add white paint. So you can have lots of fun experimenting with colour if you're using paint. That's the top of the riverbank. Now I'm just going to do the bottom of the riverbank, so I'm just curving around here. There we go. Oh, my brush is a bit wet. Need a bit more paint. I hope you're enjoying colouring your background in. I find it really relaxing painting and colouring. And it's something that I enjoy doing in my spare time. Maybe you do too. Okay, I've almost finished the riverbank. A bit more green here just for this part. There we go. Okay, so you can see now that the sky's painted, the riverbank's painted, so all that's left is this river that's curving around the bank. So the river is blue, so I'm going to use some blues. I might actually use some different shades of blues because I've got a few different ones, and I want the river to look like it's moving, like it's flowing from one side to the other, and it's following that curved line. So my strokes are going to be like the water moving. So I'll use this shade of blue first, which is quite a bright blue. There we go. And I'm going to curve round here because it's flowing quite fast. There we go. A bit of water, and I'll blend some of those darker bits a bit better. I'm going to change blues now. So I've actually got a darker blue in my palette. Oh, that's nice. Can you see the strokes I'm doing, making it look like the water is actually moving? Let's try a different blue down here. That's a nice colour blue as well, quite bright. There we go, it's curving round. In the story, the characters like to go boating on the river. They like to take their boats out and go rowing. There you go, I'm just going to carefully go around that curve up there, make it look a bit neater. You notice that I'm not using vertical strokes. Vertical lines go up and down because rivers don't do that, rivers flow. So I'm using horizontal strokes that are going across, following the curve of the river. See if you can do that when you do your colouring as well. There we go, just do that last bit at the top. I think I need a bit more blue as the river's meeting the horizon up here in the sky. There we go. Now you could just stop there and that could be your background. But I'm going to add some more detail. But before I do that, I need to let that dry. My background is now dry, so I'm ready to add some detail to it. The first thing I'm going to do is draw some trees at the top of the riverbank. Simple trees, so these are really easy to draw if you're worried about drawing trees. So we know that trees have a trunk, so the easiest way to draw a trunk is with two vertical lines going up. So I'm going to start on the top of my riverbank. I'm going to draw one line going up, and then on the other side another line going up. So that's the trunk. On top of the trunk is the trees and the bushy leaves. So I'm going to draw that using lots of curved lines going around, a bit like how you might draw a cloud or a sheep, all the way round, curving round. There's one tree. And I'm going to draw another two trees. So I'll draw a trunk on this side, and I'm going to draw a trunk on this side. And again, I'm going to use these curved lines. Slightly bigger, bushier tree, and it's going to tuck behind this middle tree. And again, I'm going to draw another bushy tree on this side, and it's going to go behind that middle tree. Make it push out a bit all the way around those curved lines, and there we've got 3 trees standing on top of the riverbank. So at the moment you can see the sky through them, so once we add colour they're going to really pop out and you'll see them more clearly. So again, I'm going to use my watercolour paints. We know that most tree trunks are brown, so I'm going to choose a dark brown. I'm still going to use my slightly thicker brush because these areas are quite big to colour, but I do have a thinner, more finer brush to use when I need it. So that's one trunk, and that covers over the sky really well actually. That's one trunk, and I'm just going to do the other 2. I'm following that line really carefully with my brush, and that down that side. It's quite fiddly actually doing it at the angle that I'm doing it at, but it's okay. There we go, that's 2. I've got a few drips there that I'll try and catch. Don't want that going onto the riverbank. And one more tree on this side. You might not want to draw any trees. You might want to draw a whole line of trees. It's entirely up to you how you make your background. So that's the trunks of the trees. Now I'm going to do the leaves at the top. So in my first background I used 3 different colour greens, one for each tree, and I think I'll do the same again because I've got some different shades of green in my palette. So the first tree I'm going to use this bright green, and I'm making the brush swirl round and round to match the curves of the tree, spreading out that green. There we go. There we go, that's one. Now I want to choose a different shade of green. I think I'm going to choose this shade. I think it might be a little bit darker. It's a little bit darker, but it's still quite bright. So we're swirling round and round to match the shape of the tree. There we go, there's 2. Now the third tree, let's have a look which green I could use. I've got an olive colour green, like a browny green. I'll try this colour, swirling round and round. There we go. Some of the areas look a bit darker where I've had a bit more paint than other parts where the paint was running out, but I quite like that because that could show where there's more leaves bunched together in the tree. So I quite like that, so I'm going to leave it like that. So that is the 3 trees painted. That I could stop there, but I think I'm going to add a little bit more detail. So now decided that I want to draw another tree, a different type of tree. This tree is going to be hanging over the river, a bit like a weeping willow tree. So these trunks are going to be narrower than these thick trunks. They're going to come out from as if they're growing from outside this background. So I'm going to come up, do one vertical line, and then I'll join up the other side. It doesn't really matter if it goes wobbly or some areas are wider than others, because it will look really good when it's painted. So that's going to be one of the main trunks, and I'm going to do a second one, just coming out this way a little bit and down on that side. Now off of these main trunks I'm going to draw some shorter branches growing in different directions, just like a real tree. There we go. And even off of some of these branches I could do some even smaller ones, which will look really effective, like a real tree when it's painted. There we go. Okay, so I've drawn out my tree. Now I'm going to add some colour. I'll stick with my bigger brush for the trunks because I can paint that quicker. using that brush and follow the line of my trunk. There we go, you can see it coming to life now. Add a little bit more paint. There we go. That's one trunk. On the other trunk, I'm going to drag my brush, not really moving, I'm pulling it along the shape of the trunk all the way to the top where it finishes. A bit more paint, a bit more water actually. It's dragging a little bit. There we go. Now you can see the bristles on this brush are quite thick, so it's going to be a bit tricky to paint the smaller branches with this paintbrush. So I've got a smaller brush which is better for detail. Here it is. It's got finer, smaller bristles. So I'm going to use the same shade of brown to do these branches up here. Oh, I didn't load up my brush enough. Let's do that again. Now, the lovely thing about watercolours is they dry really quickly. There you go, and the branch up here. And let's do these branches too, because you can see it coming to life now. Trees only look like this bare in winter, and I've already said that my picture is going to be set in the summer season, so I'm going to add some leaves and flowers to the tree when it's dry. But while the tree dries, I'm going to paint some plants and grasses and reeds around the riverbank. So I'm going to use my smaller brush and my different shades of green to make those grass. So I'm going to use vertical strokes. Remember, vertical means up and down. And to make them look like real grass and reeds, I'm going to group them in fives. So I'm going to do a group of 5, then leave a space and do another group of 5. So my reeds are not all going to go straight up. Some of them are going to go at a slightly different angle, like that. There's someone going up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There we go. It's a group of 5. You change to a different green. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 going there. Let's try a different green. 1, 2. I chose 5 because I think they look quite effective grouped in 5s, but you don't have to. You can do as many as you want. It's just what I've chosen to do. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And do some down the bottom as well. Can do longer and shorter grasses as well. They don't all have to be the same length. Whatever you want to do, it's your background, so you can choose how detailed or what you have growing in your background. I think it's looking a bit bare on this side, so I'm just going to do some grass over here as well. I haven't used this green. We get a couple of long ones in that one, and a few more up here as well. Slightly thicker ones there. Now if I turn my brush, I'll try and do some narrower, taller ones as well. Here we go. There, starting to look more like a riverbank, but I still think we need a bit more colour, and this tree needs some leaves. Now it's had a few minutes to dry, I'm going to add some leaves. Now you learnt a technique in your art lessons before Christmas called stippling. So I'm going to use my brush to stipple some leaves onto the tree. So I'm going to choose a green, and I'm just going to use my brush just to make marks. Actually, the brush makes marks that look like leaves. So this is one green that I'm using. All all around the branches, just like on a real tree. There we go. I'm going to change greens now, a different shade of green, because you know that leaves are not all the same. They do have different shades of green. A bit more up here. I think I need a darker green up there. I'll use this olive green again. There we go. Oh, that looks better. That tree's got some leaves. I also used a cotton bud to stipple. So I just needed to wet it first because I'm using watercolours. If you're using poster paints, you won't really need to wet it, but I need to wet it so it will pick up the paint. And I'm going to add some flowers. So I would choose quite a dark pink so you can see. So I'm rubbing, just rubbing the cotton bud in the cup so you can see it on the end now. And I'm going to use that to stipple to make little dots and marks which look like flowers. So I'm going to add them to the ends of those leaves like that. Could add a few more. Oh, they look nice. I might actually put some pink in the tree too, like blossom or fruit. There we go. And because the cotton bud has two ends, I'm going to use the other end to use a different colour. And I really like yellow flowers, so I'm going to choose a yellow because it's a bright, sunny, happy colour, and put some yellow flowers on some of these as well. So you can do as many flowers. You could do lots and lots, or you could just do individual ones at the end of each grassy stem. It's up to you how detailed or how colourful your background is. Now that my background is dry and finished and I've made my puppets, I can start to play and make my own puppet show for my family. If you haven't made your puppets yet, you can look at my video on the remote learning package and I'll show you how to make these stick puppets. Once you finish, don't forget to take photos of your backgrounds and puppets, or maybe even a video of the puppet show that you put on for your family and friends. We would love to see them. Have fun. Bye.